It's actually our brain's favorite way of learning through joy. It actually lights up our brain in a totally different way. And when we're talking about learning, we think of learning in a little bit of a different way. It's learning how your body works, learning what it's like to make friends, and really ultimately learning how to be your best self. We believe that play teaches us how to live life a little more fully. When people work with us, they start pulling out catalogs and think about creating these really elaborate play environments. And we have to remind them that play is actually pretty simple, that there are small sparks that will invite a lot of play to happen. And a lot of it comes down to time and space, being with other people in play and doing something as simple as blowing bubbles together. Play is often very messy, and I think that we kind of overlook that. So it's really important to make space and time for it to occur. I finally gave in during COVID, and there's just a mud section of my yard. Play is also very risky. It challenges kids to reach their full potential physically and emotionally. And it also challenges us as caregivers about how we feel about them pushing those boundaries. So it often asks us to change the way that we perceive a situation or the language that we use when helping kids with their play. Play also keeps us young. It's what gives us a spark. It connects us to one another, and it connects us to ourselves. So we are a nonprofit organization, and our mission is building better play through research, design, and advocacy. We've had opportunities to study play in environments around the world. This is one of the oldest playgrounds in London. It's called Pools Playground. It has this epic 3-story concrete mountain that kids get to slide down the front of into this huge pool of sand. We also study play at Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park in London with these really fabulous tree houses. One of my favorite moments here was that there would be people running by on the trails, and they would see this, and it'd be like a guy like walking his dog, and he'd tie the dog up, and he'd like look around and then scramble to the top of the tower and run across and try out the slide and the swing. And it's really fun to see how play can really just light people up regardless of how old they are. So we have, in our studies, we have actually created a foundation of play information on over 25,000 people. And we use that observational data to inform the way that we look at and design for play. We had the opportunity to work with Digsaw and Smith Memorial Playground, and we got to build the first climbing wall inside of a library here in Philadelphia. We're also designing these really fantastic tree houses for the city of Hoboken, these giant bird nests in the sky with really fantastic slides. We are always advocating on behalf of the role of play, asking who is play for, why is it important? So we speak at conferences around the world, and we really try to enforce the idea that you're never too old to stop playing. And we are also parents, so we live and breathe play every day. So that was where we were. We were studying play behavior. We were designing these really fantastic spaces for play to happen. And then the pandemic hit. And so those spaces, many of them were closed, and many of our design projects went on hold. So we kind of took a step back and we said, okay, what does play look like in a pandemic where we're socially isolated, we're separated? Can we look at play from the lens of helping people not just survive through COVID, but also to thrive? So we, in kind of a moment of despair, to be honest, when things weren't going so well, it's like, how do you bring play to people that are stuck at home? And we realized that it happens so quickly. And for parents that might have lost their jobs, they may not have had the opportunities to have things for play to happen in their homes. They may not have the resources. So maybe we should bring some of those resources to those local families. So we sat down, we brainstormed, like, what's the simplest items that we could use? Could we create a number of crafts? Just help to support parents who were home trying to juggle work and their young kids, and really to ensure that, that play would continue to happen during the pandemic. So we created these play packs, which we ended up, we did a big campaign. We raised $5,000. We got a bunch of in-kind materials, and we distributed them at food distribution sites around the city of Philadelphia to families in need. And we ultimately supported 2,600 families within the city. And then we had the opportunity to partner with our local Parks and Recreation Department, our local Children's Hospital, and our YMCA. And so they expanded the program, and then ultimately we reached 10,000 families around the city. And it was very simple. It's art materials, some invitations to go on adventures. All of them had children's books, just simple things that we thought people might not have at home. And then we did these really fun kind of silly crafts with things that you might have just had around, like everyone was hoarding toilet paper. So we started doing a lot of toilet paper based crafts, like this toilet roll octopus. We thought about fun ways to create like little yarn monsters. As part of the campaign to raise the funds for the project, we actually gave away all of these activity resources for free. So we created a month's worth of activities along with 3 Mother's Day activities, and we put all of those on our website. So we asked people, if these resources are helpful to you, please also contribute to the campaign to support kids and families in Philadelphia, but otherwise just use them. Because I know as a parent, juggling young kids, my kids are 4 and 6, and 2 parents that work full-time jobs, coming up with craft ideas wasn't like, top in the agenda. But it was so incredibly important for us as we were trying to figure out how to be emotionally healthy through this pretty traumatic time. So these are some pictures from some of the organizations that we distributed through. And then we had the opportunity to work with our local urban farm, Greensgrow. They reached out to us and they said, we love the play packs idea, but we think that the bit that's missing is we want to connect families to nature. And specifically, we want to connect them to nature in their immediate backyard, like in nature in their neighborhood. So can we take these ideas of these little kit of parts and can we add some natural components? So we came up with a box system. So every month you got 30 activities. You had 30 stickers. Everybody likes stickers. Each individual card was a prompt for a caregiver and a child to do a different activity together that was based around categories like learning about healthy eating, learning about the natural environment, creating art, going on adventures and discovery, learning about local insects or local animals, and then also had the opportunity to plant things. So in the local Pennsylvania kits, we included a living plant as well as seeds. And then for the ones that went out of state, it was just seeds and soil. All of the kits had a variety of art supplies. Some of them also had bubbles. We were very excited to include adventure tools, all of our favorite tools. We found this really fabulous pocket microscope that fits in the palm of your hand so you can look closer. Magnifying glasses, compasses, little crates where you can find all of your treasures and hide them away or sneak some bugs in there. We always included seeds and living plants. I was excited because we included mushroom spawn, and I grew oyster mushrooms from a roll of toilet paper, which I didn't even know you could do. And then every one of the activity cards was focused on just an invitation to look closer, connect with nature, connect with each other, and go on adventures. So a lot of them were based on activities that we had done for other clients, like with the Free Library of Philadelphia. We had done an adventure kit for them, so kids could actually check out adventure tools from our local library. And what was so nice about this is that we made this resource that families could purchase if that was something that they felt they could do, but we also gave a lot of the resources away for free. So if families just wanted to do the activities and not get the tools. And we had multiple families reach out to us, 2 stand out in particular. One, she said her son, who was 8, hated going outside. That was not something that he was comfortable with at all. He hated being dirty. They went on the plant walk and the rainbow plant walk, and he was so excited. He took all these pictures, they made a little collage, and now he goes out every day. So it's just this little spark in this invitation to be outside in a joyful way that really connected him to nature. Oh, sorry, and then the second story was another friend of ours. She was caring for both her young children and also her mother, who had Alzheimer's. And she actually used the plant walk as a way of spending time with her in a really positive way. They would go on walks every day, and she would send me pictures of the plants that collected. So each of these initiatives, it started from a point of how do we still play? That was the main question. How do you play in a pandemic when you can't be with your friends and you're cooped up inside? And we wanted to remind people that it's very simple, and it really just starts at your front door. Like, just really take the first step. Go outside. Nature is close by. You don't have to find a park or a playground, or maybe you have to find a nature center, Mike. There are special things in the nature center. But you can find little bits of nature that inspire really interactive play, like a stick. A stick is probably one of the best toys out there. It sparks all kinds of different adventures. Look a little bit closer about what's in your nearby vicinity. If you're 3 feet tall, there's a lot that looks like an adventure. It could be a small rock, it could be a small tree. I was really surprised the number of climbing trees we had in our neighborhood once we started exploring. You might, in your explorations, find some beautiful gems that you didn't realize were really close by. This pond has frogs that are bigger than a dinner plate, and we spent a bunch of time here. But even if you live in a more urban environment, you can still find nature tucked into crevices and cracks. And so a lot of the activity cards were just about looking and inviting people and saying, like, maybe we can find things that like align with the letters in your name and go on a name adventure, or go on a rainbow walk. And what is the different graffiti that you see, or can you find your favorite puddle? So then once you've gone on your own adventures and you've brought that love of nature play into your own home, can you start to create invitations to spark others to play? So if you have the opportunity, if you have some loose parts hanging around, it doesn't take much. If you leave out some balls or some hula hoops, we actually have a couple of stumps that we leave out to encourage kids to jump and just like take a minute on their walk. Or we have a pretty active block party in Philadelphia where you can actually block off your street. We've had COVID block parties where people were socially distanced. And then they had a few simple play props to encourage kids to interact with each other. We also have a really active Play Streets program, which would be great to see. It's the oldest Play Streets program in the United States, and it went all summer long. People were super creative in the way that they sparked play in the city. A lot of kids drew pictures of rainbows, and then there was a rainbow scavenger hunt in their windows, or they would leave notes to people in chalk on the ground. We did that on a pretty daily basis. And these are some of my favorites. If you want to spark whimsy and joy and create storytelling, our neighbors have set these up. They've created the secret gardens of Chester Avenue with a magic wand shop. And my favorite is the hobbit holes. We have hobbit holes all over our neighborhood. And this one was stumping for Bilbo Baggins for president and just say no to Sauron. What is this one? Sorry. Another reminder, especially as we're heading into the fall and winter season, is that play has no season. Just because it's not gorgeous outside, we can still find opportunities to play. With COVID-19, depending on your municipality, all of Philadelphia's playgrounds are open, but they're not always feeling like the safest because people aren't distancing or maybe not masking. So wintertime actually might be a great time to go out and get your physical activity in the playground because there won't be as many people there. Even our littlest friends, if we dress them properly, can still enjoy the great outdoors and learn how to ride their bike on a nature trail. And a reminder that there is no bad weather, there is only bad clothes. So find yourself a great llama hat and get out there. And then make sure that you leave behind little tidbits of play. This was a fun installation at our local park where kids and their families were making these mini snowmen with crazy faces and clothes made out of a variety of nature parts. And then it would change every day and they were in different groupings. And it was fun to just sort of watch the evolution of the stone people. Another thing that we need to work on is saying yes to play. The words and language that we as adults use when talking to kids about how their bodies are in space and how play is happening. So I'm going to work through a couple of these with you. And this is for parents, for caregivers, for educators, just really thinking about language and how you can open play. It's like thinking of it as yes and as opposed to shutting kids down. So instead of saying, be careful, you might ask them to notice how, or do you notice that? One of my favorites is instead of you might fall is where is your body right now? Kids in their play are learning a lot about their physical body. Their bodies are growing really fast and their sense of self and where their bodies are in the world. It's good to just remind them instead of you might fall. Instead of watch out, don't get wet, maybe say you're not wearing the right thing right now. We can bring it next time. Or you could just dress them in things that you don't mind getting muddy and wet in the first place. Instead of saying you might hurt someone, ask what could happen if. Instead of saying, how did you get so dirty? You can say, you look like you had a lot of fun. Instead of mentioning how bad the weather is today and saying that we can't go outside, you can mention how nature needed a drink. So let's grab our rain gear and go out. Instead of asking them not to throw things, mention that there might be a better place to do that. Instead of saying, keep your shoes on, say, let's find a good place to be barefoot. And I think that some of us are conditioned to certain ways that are appropriate to be and play. And you might have this in your mind where you say, well, that's not how you play. So instead, just remind yourself, instead of verbalizing that, remember that there is no wrong way to play. So play is an essential building block for human development and also for animal development. All mammals actually play. So from infancy, when babies come out, they don't have a real sense of play. They're in an unoccupied state of play. Then they begin to reach and grasp, and they start having solitary play moments. All of these moments are very developmentally appropriate, and play is how we're building connections in the mind. Then they start to notice that others are playing around them. Then they start to play in parallel with each other. Then they start to play with objects with other children. And then they reach a stage where they're starting to play together. So it's all about exploring your world, exploring other people, and making these small movements in development so that you can start to form these lasting social relationships. Research shows us that all mammals play. And there's a really great study on bear play. And it was interesting because they would see that bears were playing and that they were actually making choices instead of looking for food or instead of trying to find a place to drink, they were spending a lot of time playing. And so in the course of this study, they found that the bears that played more when there were times of crisis or trouble, those were the bears that were more resilient and survived. So what they decided is that it's through play that we are acting out different scenarios in an environment where you're very safe. So you get to try things out. And then because you have that experience of trial and error, when you hit a moment of significant crisis, like we are in the pandemic now, it's when you get the chance and the opportunity to try those out that you're going to be more resilient in times of crisis and trauma. Once you reach middle childhood, I think caregivers and adults and educators, when they look at play, they just put one category on it. It's just play. I love looking at the 16 types of play, which comes from A Play Worker Lens by Bob Hughes. It really works through and defines all these different aspects of what play is to the child and what it is that they're trying to explore and learn and grow. They're learning about communication skills and how to talk to each other. They're exploring their own creativity. They're understanding what it means to be deeply invested in something, entering a kind of flow that we as adults understand when we're really excited about a project and time just kind of evaporates. They're experimenting with different social roles. They're trying on different ways of being with each other, like I'm a doctor or you're a shopkeeper. So they're experimenting with rule structure. They're experimenting with like, can I be a pirate? They're looking at how different materials feel and how does it feel like my kids love to just like smear paint all over their whole body. Like, what does that feel like? And how does, do I like that or do I not? It's kind of cold. They're experimenting with fantasy play. Like, what is the reality that we live in? They get to think about, can I be a superhero or not? Like, does gravity really exist? Can I actually fly? A lot of what we see with locomotor physical play is, again, kids like experimenting with their envelope and where do their bodies exist in space. They're experimenting with tools, learning how to master things and situations like digging a hole. They experiment with different kinds of objects. One of my favorites is recapitulative play, which is experimenting at history. So maybe you're going to be a caveman and start a fire and like kill a buffalo and take that apart. Rough and tumble play, I think, is something that is challenging to a lot of educators and parents. I know my kids are inside and my couch is suffering, but there's a reason for it. And again, it's about that push and pull, like how much am I allowed to touch you? And is this okay? and what are the rules and the social norms related to that. And then the last one is symbolism play, and really trying to understand, like, is a banana a phone, or can I just pretend that it's a phone, and like, where's that line of reality? Then we start to move, like, I think a lot of that play is very familiar to people. If you were around young children, you really understand. You may have noticed a lot of those different play types, but not understood why it was important to kids. But then we start to hit the middle childhood to teen play. And that's when kids are really starting to test their boundaries and their envelopes, and what is okay, and what happens if I push that line. So Ellen Sandsetter started categorizing these types of risky play. And I think it's important to note this because many people are starting to spend a lot more time with their children, and they may be setting restrictions on the way that their physical bodies move within space. So kids are looking for opportunities to move their bodies and be at really great heights. They want to know what it feels like to have that thrilling sensation. They like to move at high speeds. This is my favorite picture of this guy with his amazing hoodie. They're interested in exploring and moving past not just a tool and a mastery of a tool, but understanding how to use a harmful tool. Like, can I use a hammer and a nail, or a saw, or even a power tool? Basically making those steps towards adulthood. They are interested in harmful elements, and harmful elements have different perceptions based on the child's experience. Like, for some kids whose parents have not brought them out into nature, interacting with mud or water is actually very terrifying to them, or interacting with bugs or worms. So harmful elements kind of can span a range all the way up to fire. We talked about rough and tumble play, the role of that. And then one I really want to focus on now, because we are spending a lot of time together, is the opportunity to be lost. I don't think we talk enough about giving kids space. They are around adults a lot, and there's a lot of expectations on them, especially in this time where they're having to learn a whole host of new skills related to online learning, and being away from friends, and giving them the opportunity to have downtime and just be with themselves, I think is a piece that's missing. So thinking through the development of play, then we hit the teenage years and we're done. Like, we don't need to play anymore. We're grown-ups. Like, what's the point? And I don't think we give ourselves enough credit. And we talk about the need to have like self-care, and I need to carve out a little time for myself. And we don't step back and say, like, when was the last time I experienced joy, or was really thrilled? Like, you think about that sense, that like pit in your stomach when you're at the top of a roller coaster or something. Like, you should still want to have those feelings. Like, those make you feel that like pure delight and that like laugh out loud. Like, we need to be able to still experience that, because otherwise, what is the point? Like, Mike, we were just talking about Zoom purgatory, and I think that we're like all existing in that a little bit right now, and there needs to be something else, like some other point. So just kind of figuring yourself out, like, what is your spark? What is the thing that keeps you happy and gives you that thrilling sensation? For me, I'm going to say it's puzzles. For me, I'm a little obsessed. For others, it's playing games with others, playing games with their kids. Maybe it is those like thrilling physical sensations that you miss. Like, maybe you would love to go rediscover a swing, get as high as you can. I was pretty sure this guy was going to go full circle around this swing. Or really just remind yourself that you're a weird individual, and like embrace that. Like have those weird moments on a purple dinosaur, and just kind of like remind yourself what it is like to be human in this time of like crisis and trouble, I guess. So I think just taking a step back and thinking about what is the point of play, and what can it give you? Like, we've done all this study on how play helps infants develop, and how what kids are seeking throughout various points in their life, and as they're hitting middle childhood. But we're so goal-oriented as a society, and so focused on the end game of achievement, that we don't often just take a step back and ask ourselves if we could rediscover the art of doing nothing very well. And what does that look like for us? Because it's going to be different for each individual person. So I think I would invite each of you to just leave time in your day for getting lost, for being outside, for taking those small moments. Just take a step out the front door and reconnect with the outside world. Maybe climb some things, get a little thrill. Maybe throw some things. I really like throwing things sometimes. I think we all sometimes need that. Go to a creek, throw some rocks in, kind of release the tension. Splash in puddles, find treasures. Give yourself opportunities to move, grow, and breathe. And ultimately, your inner child will thank you. That's the end.
That's great. Thank you. Let me go into the chat. There's some questions. Someone mentioned that they're learning how to juggle right now. It's great.
Yes. Oh, there's so many great chats.
I'd also want to offer that these Thursday night live events are being on the Schuylkill Center's YouTube channel. So look for this on the YouTube channel if you want to go back and look as well. All right, trying to go back to this. Someone wants a copy of your slides. There's a reference to the book Last Child in the Woods, which is kind of a seminal book. It's 15 years out already, which is really remarkable. Richard Louv, L-O-U-V, is the author, and it's the importance of, especially to kids, of being outside. But I think that's for humans in general.
Balanced and Barefoot is another great one by Angela Hanscom. That she has a lot of the things that I stated in this talk. She has all of the background research on the importance of it from an occupational therapy standpoint.
So if people have questions or reactions for Meghan, please put them in chat and I'll read them to her for you. Tracy was thinking this very thing today about being lost. What does that do for you when you get lost?
I think, well, we just went backpacking for 4 days.
Yeah.
In the Grand Canyon of Pennsylvania with no cell coverage. It's being able to disconnect. So something that we weren't talking about a lot is how much we're asking children to be on screens, and all the screen time is thrown out the window because we have to educate them. And I get worried myself, like, educate them in what? And the burnout, my daughter's in first grade, and the Zoom burnout, the screen burnout. And I think we also have screen burnout as well. So just give yourself a moment to really disconnect. Like, what can you gain from just being outside? Like you were saying, like forest bathing in the pine circle. You can get a lot more of that, about 10 minutes in that, than you do 10 minutes surfing on your phone. So just making those choices about disconnecting and reconnecting.
Yeah, and even just seeing green is we're sort of hardwired for green. So it's actually a soothing color for us. So we calm down automatically when we see green trees, which are kind of hard to see this time of year. But anyway, red trees are also really cool.
And there's also a myopia as well, that like our eyes, if we're looking at screens for long periods of time, getting out into nature, we have a longer view with our eye, and it's much healthier for our eyes.
Yep. And apparently there's also lots of fractals in nature and lots of hard edges on screens and in houses. And those fractals also, our eyes seek them out, and that's also calming and soothing as well. So, and it also helps with attention. We discovered in nature preschool that kids who are outside along, their attention is different. They can tune into things for a longer period of time. We have a question from Claude, who's interested in finding out if COVID transfers less from natural materials and plastics and metals. Have people researched that? Do you know offhand?
I don't. So there was research that came out of Oxford about transfer on plastics and metals. But Claude, you'd be interested to know this. So we had a client that we worked with that was a school district. The board wanted nature play and the community did not. And they wanted what they knew. They wanted the standard stuff out of a catalog. And so there was a lot of pushback. We just installed 3 natural playgrounds with these really beautiful salvaged logs and big rope climbers. And all of the feedback has been super positive. They're very pleasant, comfortable places to be in. But the thing that we got was, before, nature play is too risky because of scrapes and splinters and all that. And now they're saying it's very COVID appropriate. So there is a perception in parents that nature does not transmit as much as natural or as man-made material. So I thought that was super interesting for an entire population of people to switch their risk profile from splinters and scrapes to this is better for COVID.
Interesting. mentioning some book titles before this one. I think it's called something like The Blessings of a Bruised Knee or a Skinned Knee. Like it's okay to take your kid outside and let them get scratched a little bit. That's okay. It's a growth experience for them. That's the risky play part you're talking about.
Well, there was a moment, I think it was like a decade ago, where there was a shift in hospitalizations. There used to be more arm fractures, and now it's more like use injuries with thumbs and fingers because of using technology. And so to understand that like pivotal moment of when we stopped going outside and it was okay to get hurt in that way, that was like a moment in childhood. So yeah, injuries are changing.
There's a thread of a conversation. Kathleen is wondering, she can't remember the last time she laughed out loud until she cried and she wants help. So we,
Find a big slide or a tree.
that's
Flip
true.
upside down. Have you
Yeah.
ever been in those tables, those inversion tables? That like just flipping your body upside down. Something we didn't talk about is that you may see kids spinning or wanting to be upside down in trees, and that's super developmentally appropriate because they're trying to understand how their bodies work in space and like build their proprioception. And it makes us want to barf because we've already built that perception, but I had a parent that he had like a light bulb moment. He was like, "What? My kid always spins, and I always tell him to stop." And I was like, "Don't. It's good for him."
Right. So if you want to crack up with your partner, do something unexpected and outrageous, right? Mud is great.
But
Adults never think to do that. Like we can play with mud too.
there's International Mud Day um, at the Hands on Anarchy Zone in Ithaca. That's really cool.
That's great. Um, more questions or comments, please put them in chat. Meghan, I bet you've been reflecting on the cost to childhood of this pandemic and having kids retreating inside. I can't imagine how we recover from this when this ever ends.
But it's interesting too because I think that people don't give kids enough credit. My children, even this morning, so I'll share an experience. So we've had a situation in Philadelphia where a person was killed, and it's caused a lot of riots, and it's smashed up some things in our neighborhood. And my kids are processing through play how they feel about that. There's been helicopters, they're having challenging moments, but they're dealing with things that I didn't deal with until I was like a teen or an adult, and they're working it out through their play experiences. That's why I'm actually very interested to watch kids at the Schuylkill Center in a couple of weeks when we go there, because they're absorbing all of this, but they're still, to them, it's just business as usual, right? Like for my kids, some of their first memories are that they were home with us. And for them, they were like, yeah, we're home with mom and dad. This is great. They don't remember the times that I was really stressed because I was trying to run a meeting and hear them shouting in the background. Like they just got to spend time with mom and dad. Mm-hmm. So for us, it's very traumatizing, but for them, it's just the world. So I don't know, like it'll be curious to see what happens, and maybe we'll make more resilient humans. Like I'm worried about the screen time part, but I'm also interested with them being asked to deal with very, very tough things very early. And yeah, I don't know, like it might end up being interesting.
That is interesting. Tracy wonders if you can speak to their propensity, I guess children's propensity to want to clean things. I guess that's how they're working out COVID. They're cleaning things.
Yeah. Well, they're just mirroring, right? Like we were talking through those 16 play worker behaviors. I wonder if there will actually be new taxonomies of play in COVID, because they're seeing their grown-ups obsessively cleaning and touching, and the mask wearing, that was not a hard transition for our children or the children at our daycare. They were like, okay, this is just part of the clothes I put on each day.
Right.
Yeah, so I think it's just it's a mirroring behavior, and play is just understanding social hierarchy and how I fit in the world and how things work. So yeah, I think that's what it is.
I think adults forget that the work of a child is play. Play is their work at some level. Yeah.
And it's I don't know, it's fascinating, right? Like just watching them work it out, and when they have these hard, big feelings.
Right. We're also entering one of the more playful times of years, Halloween, in a couple of days. And Our street, we have a lot of twins in our street, so we're usually descended on Halloween with hundreds of trick-or-treaters. We don't even know where they come from. But now we're trying to figure out if anybody's going to be trick-or-treating or not, or if we should be giving them candy or not. We're trying to figure that out. So the whole playfulness of the holidays being lost, which is so disappointing for me. If anybody else is having that
I
reaction
think
too, I feel like
Kathleen had a
it's a big
question.
loss. What's that?
I think Kathleen had a question.
From an organizational perspective, can you address play partners, facilitated play versus free play with no interaction from staff?
Do you want to give the perspective of the Schuylkill Center?
Sure. So we've alluded to this. We mentioned this at the beginning and then just alluded to it 5 minutes ago. The Schuylkill Center has a preschool, and our preschool has a playground, play area, a playscape that's made of natural materials. And so that's an important component of nature preschool, that the kids go there. And a lot of it is just their own play. And the whole curriculum of nature preschool is emergent. So the children study what, the teachers help them study what interests emerge from them. So I think there's a lot of free play where they're doing what they want to. And I think all those different types of play that you mentioned, they all emerge with different groups, different clusters of kids are doing different things, and they'll connect with each other as they want to. So they're the kids who want to do the big gross body stuff and want to climb things, but then there's the mud pie section and the loose parts with sticks and just building stuff. So you've got multiple things going on, and the adults don't have to monitor it. But you can probably give a more organized answer than that, Megan.
Well, I think what we're interested in and why we're so excited to work with you is that we're excited about the things that spark different kinds of play, like the stuff of play, like this pot and pan or this like muffin tin, or we got really excited because we were like, maybe we should put a bunch of frames together and make it a treasure wall, and they could put all their favorite little objects, because we have a lot of treasure boxes around our house that are full of, I don't know, marbles and rocks and body parts of insects. Like especially, the spotted lanternfly. We have a lot of pieces of the spotted lanternfly
In treasure boxes.
in the treasure boxes. Yeah, why not? They're going to open
Why?
them in like 10 years and be like, what was I doing? Like, I don't remember.
The wings are very pretty.
Yeah. So I think the role of the adult in the scenario is to lay out a stage and have the stuff that sparks and is built and it's constantly moving, and that the interjection is talking about relationships. So if we're seeing like a social relationship breakdown between kids, stepping in to make sure that everyone feels safe, and not putting too much of a rule structure on it, except for some simple ones, about like keeping your body safe and other people's bodies safe. And then also talking about respect of the environment. So I know that that's a big part of what you guys teach.
Right.
About where it's safe to dig and where it's not safe to dig. And yeah, that's, I know that there's been a lot of research about the role of playful learning and establishing rule structures over play to inform a certain learning outcome. But I just think of learning in a different way. And it's mostly about, we don't talk enough about physical body. And I've been a rock climber for more than 20 years and have taught climbing for a very long time. And there's a really big sense of self and confidence that comes from understanding how your body works and how you can use it and like achieve something really significant that can trickle down into other levels of confidence. So I think I'm always very focused on supporting kids' physical and emotional development. And then that lays the foundation for other learning.
Tracy has a Willy Wonka non-contact approach for candy. Check that out. Claude still stuffs stuff in his pockets, acorns, rocks, feathers.
When you come in our house, Claude, we just have this huge glass cabinet that's just full of all of our treasures. I have a whale vertebra in there that I found when I was a teenager.
Wow.
I like keeping weird things because then there's like stories and sentiment attached to it.
Tracy has nature souvenirs. She heard a 6-year-old call them. Yep. Yeah. Nature's full of souvenirs. It's great.
Special treasures.
So, how do you feel about children connecting with other children? It's also a challenge of this time. I guess some families are forming pods as one way to sort of break through this and be together. But that's also, it's hard to be social.
Mhm. I think it depends on the density of the place that you live. So in our neighborhood, there's a lot of people out. I really enjoyed being in quarantine because I felt like we connected with neighbors more. Like we were in our yard, but we can see everyone walking by. And so we actually fostered closer social relationships in that way by interacting with people. But it was just like over a fence, we kept our distance. I can only really speak to like our personal experience, and now we have our children in care, so they're still able to be in a nursery. It's like a very like child-led nursery as well, so they have a really great experience with other kids. It's fewer, but every family's experience is different. Oh, Claude just said that his parents went through the polio epidemic and they maintained their polio pod friends across their entire lives.
That's great.
Well, I think that's interesting because we feel that like some of our strongest friendships are actually born of hard times. Like some of our like backpacking friends, like we go through something like extreme together and then we're bonded in a different way. So maybe the social relationships that build now will feel stronger to them because they will have gone through, in hindsight, it will seem like such an extreme moment. It's like a shared experience.
Well, it's almost 8 o'clock. Meghan, do you have any good summary experiences and summary comments for us as we think about this stuff?
I think as it gets colder,
Right.
don't shut yourself up. Like, just remind yourself that you can take a walk. You can take a distanced walk. Like we have found a lot of our social relationships broken down. Like, yeah, we would see the neighbors, but then other behaviors that we had, like people that we would see on a regular basis, are broken, and we just have to readjust and like, oh, we can still go on walks together, and oh, we can meet in the park, and like nature is, I think, the best remedy for COVID right now. So take advantage of what you have in your backyard.
One of my funnest things to do at the Schuylkill Center is to make sure I'm the first one to drive in after a snowfall. That is the best because then you see where every animal was the night before.
Yeah.
And you can find the fox track because the fox knows exactly where it's walking and it goes in a straight line and does not mess around. But the dog does this. Squirrels you can see hopping. I even found a place where like a hawk came and grabbed something. It just like you see the feathers and boom, in the snow. So it's the best thing is to be the first person. So go for a snow walk and, have your kids try to figure out what the stories were of what happened in the snow. That's really, and then make snow angels, of course. So yeah, winter's coming. Yeah. So Meghan, I want to thank you so much. Thank you and Studio Ludo for your work. Really appreciate it. Thank you everybody for coming to Thursday Night Live.
Hey, Meghan, right on. That was great.
Yay, Tracy.
Thank you.
You guys, Tracy was my teacher when I was in 5th grade, and she taught me everything I know about connecting with nature.
Oh, that is so great. Thank you, Tracy. So glad you joined us. Great. Thank you, everybody. We're taking a couple of weeks off on Thursday Night Live, and we're back on the 19th with the Megs Award and Jerome Shabazz. Hope you'll join us then. Lots of other programs happening. Come for a walk at the Schuylkill Center or anywhere green. And Meghan, again, on behalf of all of us, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Thanks, everybody. Happy
Bye.
Halloween.